What's happening, guys? Today's video was made possible by EA Game Changers, and this time around we're going to be talking about the various Javelins in Anthem and my thoughts on each after getting a chance to go hands-on. So for the purpose of the demo, we all started off with the Ranger Javelin, and we unlocked a second one once we hit level 13. In contrast, in the full game it's been confirmed that we're going to start off with a tutorial Javelin, and then after finishing the tutorial we'll be level 2, and we'll get access to our first Javelin, and then the rest we'll get at levels 8, 16, and 24. For the sake of this video, we're going to be going through each of the 4 Javelins. I had the majority of my time invested in the Ranger and the Colossus, but since they unlocked everything on Sunday, I did get a chance to try out both Storm and Interceptor as well. So let's just go through them in the order of what I liked least to most. And the first one up on our list is going to be the one that I had the shortest amount of time with, but despite that definitely didn't mesh with as much, and that was the Interceptor. Now, if we had to give this a MMO archetype, your Interceptor is your rogue or ninja style javelin. You are very fast, you're zipping all over the place, you have throwing stars, you have very melee-centric style gameplay, you're able to dash across the battlefield, and it is very flashy, without question. This is, you know, you're zipping all over the place, and it does feel like a mech ninja. If you're a fan of Warframe, this is probably the closest to a Warframe-esque javelin this game has, if you will. You know, Warframe is very, very movement heavy, jumping all over, doing flips, dashing around, and we see that with the Interceptor. All that being said, I really just didn't feel the Interceptor at all. It didn't really mesh with me. One thing that stood out to me about the Interceptor is in terms of elemental capability, it had the lowest among all of the Javelins. Taking a look at its assault systems, it has an impact, an acid, an ice, a blast, and then 1 spark move. And then the strike system, you had an electric primer, 3 impact moves, and then 1 venom move. So your damage with the Interceptor, as I mentioned, is going to be very melee heavy. Your abilities are more just there to supplement you going in and tearing stuff up. And honestly, it was kind of boring to me. Especially in comparison to the other Javelins, where I was going all over the place. I was working in the gunplay a lot, I was using my abilities. With the Interceptor, the majority of the time I found that it was just more effective to just beat the shit out of stuff by mashing the Y button. On top of that, the ultimate ability is basically just like an invincibility state during your ultimate. So you do your ultimate, all of your attacks can detonate combos, and you're just dashing around invincible, slicing stuff up. But because it didn't differentiate from the regular melee attack that much, I just felt like it was kind of lackluster in comparison to the capabilities that a lot of the other Javelins had. If you're a fan of melee style combat and zipping around the battlefield, I think you would end up enjoying the Interceptor quite a bit. It is very zippy, it was fun to that extent, but in terms of just pure melee, if I have my choice with melee, I'm usually going to go with the big guy that has a 2-handed weapon, not the zippy ninja style character. And moving on from the Interceptor, let's talk about the Ranger. Now, everybody that got into the beta obviously had a chance to play with the Ranger. The Ranger is kind of your bread and butter Javelin. Very balanced. He has decent defense, he has decent offense, has a little bit of everything, has some fire and frost and blast and acid. And there wasn't any one thing about the Ranger that was bad, but on the flip side, there wasn't anything about the Ranger that really stood out to me, you know, making him a super desirable Javelin. The one thing that I will say I enjoyed immensely with the Ranger was his ultimate. The multi-target missile battery was completely awesome, and every time I did it, I basically fully actualized my fantasy of being Iron Man, and without question is probably my favorite ultimate in the game. Some of them are really cool, but just targeting every enemy on the screen and unleashing a barrage of missiles is something that I've always loved, even since my Mech Warrior days, so that was really nice. I don't know if the various Javelins have different ultimates or if everyone's ultimate is kind of set, but if it's possible to change your ultimate around, I would probably take that ultimate on Colossus and, you know, just main Colossus, but using that ultimate because it was totally badass. But the abilities felt, you know, just kind of generic for the Ranger. You had grenades as one of your base things, and you had sticky grenades, secret grenades, frost, inferno, frag, etc. And then you had an assault launcher which shot out a type of missile, whether it was going to be venom darts or blast missile or a seeking missile. There's even a spark beam type thing you can do that's pretty much just Iron Man's ion ray. So pretty much, you know, if you really just want to roleplay as Iron Man, Ranger is going to be the go-to Javelin. But as I mentioned, you know, he felt very balanced, but there wasn't anything about him that really stood out and made me go, holy shit, this is the one I want to play as. Moving on from there, though, my spot for number 2 was a lot more heated between Colossus and Storm, but ultimately I'm gonna have to give it to Colossus. Now, the Beefy Boy was the one that I picked for my second unlock in the demo, and without question, the Javelin I spent the most amount of time in. It is just an absolute monster. You are basically Hulkbuster. You have a lot of big dick damage going on out. You have an ordnance launcher and then a heavy assault launcher. Your ordnance launcher involves basically high explosive mortars. There's lightning coils, there's shot coils, there's burst mortars. You just destroy everything. And then your secondary ability, from what I got to mess with, was also pretty awesome. I played a lot of time with the railgun. I also got to try the flat gun out and the venom spitter. The venom spitter just absolutely coats everything in acid. The railgun just shreds whatever you hit. You could knock down the guys that had a shield, and you hit them with the railgun and they're dead. I mean, I was doing pinpoint shots with the railgun for around 3,000 damage, which, just to put that in perspective, that was a buttload of damage. Like an ultimate that didn't hit a weak point would do about 3,000 damage, just to give you an idea of how potent the railgun was. The other thing that I really liked about Colossus, as I got to play more with him, is while initially he didn't feel that good because you don't have the energy shield, once you got used to using your actual big physical shield, you really did just feel like an unstoppable machine. I think one of my favorite moments playing with Colossus on stream was when we were doing the Tyrant Mines raid. There's a part where you basically just need to hold a control point and the game just keeps on spawning in these bugs that you gotta fight. And then I would hold out my shield and just run up and down this ramp, just driving through all of them like a massive NFL linebacker. And it was a ton of fun, just running around being like, out of the way, fuck you, out of the way, just knocking everyone with my shield. That being said, I do think the shield needs a little bit of work. Namely, I think you should be able to like have your shield up while you're rezzing, because it kind of, you know, makes sense in the realm of being a tank. But despite that, you know, using the shield as an offensive option, getting into the face of enemies, bashing them with the shield, plowing through them, that was a ton of fun. His melee is also absolutely monstrous. In particular, the coming down from the air and doing the melee smash. You pretty much are just Hulk smashing. You're falling out of the sky and just slamming into the ground, causing this huge AoE. On top of that, because it's considered a detonator, if stuff is already impacted by, you know, fire or electric or acid or whatever the case is, you're going to cause a massive explosion when you do it. You know, Beefy Boy was just, he was fun. I do think he might need a little bit of work, a little bit of tuning. As I mentioned initially, he's very squishy, and until you get the Colossus unique augments, you won't really see a difference in his health. Just to kind of show an example, in the first clip here, you can see where my health is at, and that's with basic universal augments. And then the second clip here, you can see how much larger my health bar is, and that's when I had 2 Colossus specific augments. So I think he's definitely going to be a Javelin that's going to be more gear oriented than the others. His damage felt really good despite being more of a tank style character. And another thing that I really appreciated about him is even though he was a tank, he still had movement that I felt was, you know, he didn't feel sluggish, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I think part of it might just be the beat that comes along with him. You know, you're moving, but you're just barreling through enemies. And all in all, it's probably one of the best tank experiences I've had across a lot of games. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about Storm. Oh my god. So when we were playing on stream, I did a poll for whether we should do Colossus or Storm, and everyone's like, oh, everyone's playing Storm, check out Colossus. And I did, and I liked Colossus. And when they unlocked Storm and I went in with it, you feel like a literal god. So right off the bat, one of the things I really like about Storm is that between your blast seals and your focus seals, everything is elemental based. You're using lightning, ice, or fire. You have a ton of primers. You have a ton of detonators. His ultimate is probably one of the flashiest things I have ever seen. You're just dropping out a 3-tier combo of a massive ice explosion, a massive lightning explosion, and a massive fire explosion. On top of that, using Storm's abilities, like there's no other way to describe it other than absolutely empowering. You feel so freaking powerful using his stuff. You know, you can toss out little fast fireballs, or you can charge them up for a massive explosion. When you call down lightning, it's like you see it hitting the ground and thundering and absolutely shredding everything. And as much as I like the beefy boy, I honestly think at launch I'm probably going to be a Storm main, just because I don't think I've ever played a game where I felt so in control of a battlefield. Like, just the sheer amount of damage you could output with him was staggering. And on top of that, I think one of the things that I really liked about Storm is that he felt so ability friendly. Like, I still have my weapons and I use them occasionally, but the majority of time I was playing Storm, I was constantly just going through my abilities. I was chucking out the fireballs, or I was charging them, or I was doing the lightning that would chain between enemies, or I was doing the fire explosions. Whatever the case was, I felt like I was just this flying mage on the battlefield that was just wielding unlimited amounts of destruction, and it felt extremely satisfying. So that's going to wrap things up talking about the 4 Javelins. These are the only 4 we're going to have at launch. I'm sure we're going to end up getting more Javelins down the line, but as of now, I don't believe anything else has been announced yet. So either way, let me know your thoughts down below. I'm curious if you had a chance to play the demo, what you guys thought of each of the Javelins. What is your currently favorite Javelin? What do you think you're going to end up playing at launch? So to close out, thanks for coming by, and I'll catch you guys next time with more Anthem.